Hello and welcome back to Selections from the Weird Library. I'm AP Strange, giving you a peek inside the Weird Library and the books that I have around here. And today, I wanted to do this last week and it didn't come together. It's been a little tricky to manage this one because I wanted to do a look at the periodicals desk at the Weird Library, by which I mean to say the magazines, because normally I'm picking out dusty old tomes, which that's kind of my favorite thing is the dusty old tomes, and fun little books, and that's kind of uh, when you get to a certain point, sometimes you're finding references to magazines or newspapers, and you want to track down the originals of those, and that has become somewhat of an obsession of mine. There are significant challenges to storing these things. If you want magazines, it becomes a whole different process. If you don't want them getting all beat up and degraded, because as you'll see when we go on, like especially old pulp magazines, tabloids, newspapers, those kinds of things weren't designed to last 60, 70 years. So putting them in bags with plastic is often a good way to go. But they all come in all different shapes and sizes, so it's a little bit more difficult to accommodate. As such, the weird kind of storage of these means that sometimes they get stashed away and I'm not really sure where they are. And with Christmas rapidly approaching, things have been in a bit of a shuffle around Strange HQ as we prepare to do a little bit of Christmas decorating. As you can see, my skeleton assistant up there is wearing the Santa Claus hat right now. So that's been part of it. Sometimes I'm in more of a bah humbug mood, and I think, just throw the Santa hat on the skeleton. It's good enough. But my family likes the tree, and people like that kind of thing. So, that being said, that long intro over. Some of the magazines I wanted to feature, I just can't get to right now, or not really sure where they are. So I tried. I spent a good hour this morning looking, and I'll just reference them instead. Without further ado, although I am a proponent of ado, let's get into the magazines because, all right, which one should I start with? Let's see. This has been tricky also because when I'm talking about a book, it's like a book. I got one book, and sometimes I'll reference another book in the process of talking about a book, same author, or a book that's based on a book. With magazines, it's like I have so many old magazines around here that it's like what I can talk about a general magazine, or I could talk about a specific issue. And so what I'm doing today is I think I'm going to start with Fate magazine. So Fate is one of my favorites. It has a long history. Raymond Palmer was the editor and the guy that got Fate up and running. He had worked at Amazing Stories magazine, and was really like the main one promoting Richard Shaver's mythology about the Diros and the Taros and the flying saucers and all that kind of stuff rolled into it. And with the Kenneth Arnold sighting, since Amazing Stories was a science fiction magazine, if you're putting stories in there that sound like science fiction, but you're trying to say are true, a lot of the readers really didn't cotton to that too well. They got really mad about it, and it's caused a lot of controversy. So Palmer started his own magazine, and that became Fate. Fate is amazing. It has, like I said, a history going back to the late 1940s. The earliest issues I have are from the early 50s, and I've been working on trying to get as many as I can from pretty much 1950 through the 70s. And it's really interesting to see how the magazine changed over time. So I'll go to one of the earliest ones I have. Yeah. So I pulled this one out as a good example of early ones. This is 1951, Fate magazine. We have a Marian apparition kind of as a cover story. Vision at Nisita, This also has Eight Men of the Himalayas, How to See the Human Aura, Strange Moon Mystery, What is a Poltergeist, Machines in Medicine, and True Adventures into the Mysterious and the Unknown. So kind of a cool cover art. They went all out with cover art in the early days. The classic one, I think, first issue is the Kenneth Arnold. It's a picture of a plane with the Arnold saucer above it. There's no spine with writing on these early ones. It's just centerfold staple there. And of course, where I would be remiss, because it seems like right from the beginning, they had these wonderful ads from the American Mystical Order of the Rosy Cross. So the Rosicrucians had this seemed to be funding Fate magazine from early on. So and they always have these wonderful ads. What strange cosmic power influences humans? You can get a gift copy of this sealed book from Amorc in San Jose, California. So moving forward in time, let's see. I've got throughout the 50s, you had wonderful cover art. This is one that I like to take it out of the plastic so we can actually see it. This is one I love to show off because we've got a lot of ancient mythology in these and a lot of biblical stuff, a lot of miracle stories, but this one is about Ishtar, the goddess of love, and she's got the lion right there. I like pointing this one out because if you look at the date up here, July to August 1952, this was the issue that was current at the time that George Van Tassel first contacted Ashtar Command. So one has to wonder, Ashtar, Ishtar, it's kind of funny. It's a funny little convenient thing that went on right there. Or maybe a synchronicity, who knows? But yeah, I mean, really cool cover art back then. Really cool little treasures to have. As the 50s went on, we've got more of these great covers. We've got this one with like kind of a rocket, I guess. It says flying saucers, but that looks more like a rocket to me. Awesome cover though. Italian flying saucers. And at the top it says special quest for the sacred mushroom. So just out of curiosity, because I've read through all these are chock full of articles by writers that you would know from their books, like As We Go On, Lauren Coleman, Jerome Clark, Vincent Gaddis. I got one right, Herwood Carrington. Cairo has been writing for these. Let's see, I want to see who wrote the Sacred Mushroom one, though. Dr. Stephen R. Borghigi. Yeah, can't say I'm familiar with him. But, yeah. Curtis Fuller was one of the editors here. Oh, we got Frank Edwards in this issue, so that's good stuff. They had regularly occurring stories, like Fuller would always write, I see by the papers. He'd collect weird news stories and talk about them in there. But there's like My Proof of Survival. There's always a section that's just weird coincidences. Love it. This one I like. You actually get you got a lot of legitimate scientists writing for this too. This one's really kind of curious. It has Rachel Carson with Unexplained Mysteries of the Ocean Deeps. For those unfamiliar, Carson is like a really well-regarded naturalist. She wrote the book Silent Spring, which kind of talked about the dangers posed by pesticides in the 1970s and how we were kind of destroying the environment with things like DDT. Led to a lot of environmental changes. She was a great conservationist and environmental activist. So it's kind of cool to just see like an article by her in Fate magazine in 1958. And also the cover. They Might Be Giants fans might recognize that as being the same as the cover for Apollo 18, their album, except the squid and the whale are out in space. So it's really kind of funny because you're like, oh, did they just gank that from a Fate magazine cover? That's kind of awesome. Oh, and on this one, so instead of Amorc funding this one, we have we have good old Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, the yogi, funding that, or at least an organization using his name. So as time goes on, they dropped in the late 60s sometime. I'm just using this one as an example. In the late 60s, they dropped the cool cover art. So I'm conflicted about this because just the covers I showed you are awesome. And there are all kinds of other awesome examples of covers of Fate magazine. In the interest of time, I've only picked a few. But in the late 60s into the 70s, this is kind of what you ended up with was instead of that cover, the cover art, you had a list of all the articles right on the front, which is great for me when I can't remember which issue it was that I read something in. I don't even have to open it. I can scan the cover and flip through them really quickly. But I love those covers. The cover art was so good. And I had mentioned the spine on that early one. These are easy to store in the way that they have the date on the spine because they have that particular spine to it, like the digest style magazine. These are difficult though. I mean, I feel like I need shelves that are just dedicated to digest sized magazines because a normal sized magazine storage box or like a comic book storage box is too big. They can move around and then they end up bending. Really difficult to try to store these. So if anyone has recommendations for me on that front, please let me know. Because eventually they did go back to the centerfold staple. And this one is from the 90s, I think. Oh, no, 81. So this is a 1981 Fate magazine. So you can see how the cover design changed again. I think the 90s issues are the same. At some point in the 70s, I didn't grab an example just now, but in the late 70s, they brought back the cover art more. You can see this one's kind of a combination. So it says the mystery of the Sacred Hill, and you've got the building overlaid there. So you have a little bit of both. But, you know, Fate magazine, you can find so many cool little things in every issue. And the ads are worth the price of admission. Strange things happen here in the dark continents of your mind. So, strange little stories. If you're wondering how to find these, I mean, used bookstores, when you find the weird book section, often I've found a whole shelf of these and just bought them out. Just bought the whole damn thing. eBay, like, if you look online, you can find old back issues of Fate. There's no problem at all. Like, usually they're pretty reasonably priced. As you go back and you go further back in time, ones from the 50s are liable to be more expensive because they're harder to come by. It's really hard to find ones from the 40s. There weren't that many, but those ones didn't survive as well, I guess. But sometimes it's really great to get a perspective of what people were writing at the time, even with stories that are kind of like debunked now or people don't talk about now. There's all kinds of treasures in Fate magazine. So if you have the opportunity or the wherewithal to go look, definitely go find some. Now, another thing that from a bygone era that is fun for me, a lot of fun for me, is my early introduction to the world of the weird. One of my earliest influences was the Weekly World News. This has been a major, significant part of my delay here is that I have one of the original Bat Boy issues and I can't find it. So Bat Boy, people will know Bat Boy. I had that saved from years ago, and apparently it wasn't with my other Weekly World News issues, so I don't know where it is, and that almost stopped me from doing the video. But as I say, the show must go on. I do have this gem with Elvis on the cover, and it says, "Vampire murders sweep the nation." And it's really funny when you have Elvis on the cover so big like that. I feel like Elvis was always on the cover when I was a kid, especially when it has nothing to do with the headline, because this might lead one to believe that Elvis is somehow implicated in the vampire murders, but he is not. The Elvis story that they're covering in this issue is Elvis's brush with the occult. Ghosts, premonitions, and horrible curses plague the lives of Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Tammy Wynette, and Loretta Lynn. So some countrified ghosts in this one. But yeah, I mean, uh, these are from the '80s, which I think Weekly World News was pretty new back then, and they did actually cover like true stories ish back then, because they were kind of part of National Enquirer. Can't really get into the whole history, not prepared to right now, but I guess Weekly World News was an offshoot of that. Because National Enquirer used to be a lot more wacky, but they also did run. Um, they weren't making stuff up whole cloth, which is eventually what Weekly World News became. So Weekly World News went from stories that had some basis in reality at least to things that were entirely fictitious, like good old Bat Boy here. But I mean, I remember seeing Bat Boy on the newsstands as a kid, and it was thrilling. Loved it. And I really wish I could find my original issue around here. But if you don't want to track down old Weekly World News issues, and I can tell you right now, these are a little funky smelling. I don't think I stored these ones quite right. These I picked up at a flea market, and I think they need a little bit of demildewing because I'm trying not to cough right now. You can find like volumes like this that are like an anthology of the Weekly World News stories. So I love it. These are more the ones I grew up with. These are like the '90s Weekly World News. I'll see if I can find. Oh wow, they have a whole section on Elvis in here. It's what Elvis would look like if he were alive in the '90s. Some of these are just gross. Some of them are stupid. A lot of them are stupid. Let's be honest. This is just good, stupid fun, and but I do love it. I feel like Loch Ness Monster was a regular. Bigfoot was a regular. All these JFK things. One story in particular that I know is in here, and I want to find it. Oh, well, that's not what I was thinking of, but it's a classic. Is crop circles appear in man's chest hair? But let's see. Well, there's one about a guy that was kept as Bigfoot's lover, and I can't find that now, which is disappointing. I think this actually has a centerfold. Oh, yeah, here it is. I was Bigfoot's love slave. Good stuff. So, I mean, the thing about the paranormal is that they're all just, oh yeah, here it is. Here we go. Bigfoot centerfold. Wonderful. There's so many weird stories out there, and it's easy to dismiss things when you think the story's just too weird. But I mean, a lot of the paranormal is just absurd, and it's about as absurd as anything Weekly World News would come up with and put on the cover of their magazine. So I feel like it's a cyclical thing when you look into this stuff, where you'll entertain the wackiest ideas, or you'll discard the wackiest ideas and then fold them back in. But I'm all over the place today, shuffling magazines around. But this was, I had meant to say when I showed the vampire thing with Elvis, this is another great example from National Enquirer. So that's Close Encounters of the Third Kind above Elvis's picture. When really we're just talking about like Elvis's last days, Elvis and drugs, all the revelations about Elvis from his friends after he died. So this is right after both things happened. Close Encounters, the movie, came out, and Elvis died December 1977. So yeah, this is National Enquirer, different from the Weekly World News, but kind of the same in a way. So yeah, fun with tabloids. I have a whole ton of old tabloids around here. I was fortunate enough to come across some at a flea market where a guy apparently collected anything that had Elvis on the cover, which included a lot of old Weekly World News and National Enquirer. So I really hit the jackpot that day. And they are fun. They're fun little pieces to have around. I really feel like I ought to, if I want, as soon as I find that Bat Boy magazine, the Bat Boy issue, I think it was like Bat Boy Captured. It was the second time he appeared on the magazine. Um, yeah, I think I'm just going to frame it and hang it on the wall somewhere. So this never happens again. And we're going to end today with no. This is a really odd one, and this means a lot to me that I have it. But this I bought. I found this on eBay, and it's newspaper clippings, right? So in the days before the internet, and it's like when you're reading these books, like a lot of these guys that collected weird stories and wrote about strange things had to rely on the newspapers, and they would have, there were like clipping services. People would clip things out and send them to people. But like this is a book full of clipped news stories that are all pasted into kind of a notebook, or a scrapbook rather. So it's really nice. I really enjoy this because it's clear that the gentleman I bought it from in the UK was just sitting around spinning his albums of rock music and flipping through the newspapers with his scissors at the ready to clip things out and paste them into his book. Probably just a young teenager in the late 70s. A lot of these, most of these articles that have a date on them are from like 77 or so. The page I just showed you, it's actually difficult to it's actually difficult to hold this up and show the camera because the little pieces of tape used to hold it in came loose on a lot of these, and I don't want to spill them everywhere. But this page right here, that's a young Jenny Randall's. That's Jenny Randall's just starting out. Like, that's amazing. So it's really cool to have these little clippings, because nowadays we have newspapers.com, but newspapers.com does not have everything, you know, and I try to, you can't expect them to have everything, but there's really small local papers and all kinds of other periodicals and special issues and things like that that just aren't going to appear on something like that. And it's great to have like the actual clippings from the time and be able to flip through them. Here's a good one. Flying saucers galore. Yeah, see, that's why I can't hold these up. Here we go. Flying saucers galore. Now, part of the problem with a collection like this is that not holding it against the gentleman that I bought it from, obviously, because, like I said, back in 1978, when this story is from, he was probably 14 or 15 and listening to rock and roll albums and doodling things about T-Rex and Mark Bolan on scrapbook covers. And yeah, he wasn't really keeping track of the dates or the publications these came from. So they're really hard to cite. If I were to cite any of these, I can't tell you what newspaper or what magazine he clipped it out of if he didn't include that in the clipping. So so it's tough, but it is really cool to have this little slice of life from a young ufologist in the UK. Let's see. There's a note from the guy I bought it from in here. I forgot about that. Let's see. Many thanks for your order. Hope the book's okay. Got your... Let's see. Cheers. Yeah, okay. So nothing particularly remarkable on the note that he sent. But, and I can't read his handwriting, but you know, this is really cool. And I have other old newspapers around, and sometimes when I find an old newspaper just sitting at a flea market or an antique store or something like that, especially if it's slim pickings, I might just grab it and then thumb through it later. Often you'll find something weird in there, and it's nice when you do. So I had one that I found from the 1800s. I ended up sharing the story from it on Soraya Azkath's show, Where Did the Road Go?, when I was on as a guest. It was about a green green moon and like a rope coming down from the sky that like transformed these two kids. It was just the weirdest damn story, and it's just in this magazine or newspaper from the 1800s that I happened to find at a flea market. So you never know what's out there, and it's a lot more labor intensive sometimes to shuffle through magazines even than it is for books. They usually, most books don't have, or magazines don't have a spine that's easy to scan real quick and read. You actually have to look at the covers all the time. If I do this again, I'm sure I'll revisit periodicals at some point, but I have like Time Life magazines, or well, Time magazines and Life magazines and Look magazine, National Geographics. There's always specific issues that might have something really weird either on the cover or buried in the pages, and I have some of those stashed around as well. So and those can be really tough because sometimes you find a pile of old Time magazines and there's going to be you could go through 40 or 50 of them and not see anything too weird that is worth buying the magazine. But sometimes you find a good flying saucer cover story or something. And like I said, these are all good little time capsule sort of pieces to have. Occasionally I'll find clippings tucked into a book that I bought used, and that's always really nice too. I probably should have had an example of that ready, but I didn't. So I hope you'll excuse the disoriented nature of today's selections from the Weird Library. And for those of you who are fans of my dog, he's been remarkably well behaved this time for some reason. So I'll make sure he gets a cameo in here. So there he is. There's the dope. There's Bernard. He's still here. So thank you for anyone that stuck around and watched the whole show. It is fun for me to do these. I also have my podcast. Make sure you're checking that out too. The latest episode at the time of this recording is with Susan Demeter. That was a really great chat, and that was really insightful. Susan's one of my favorites, so definitely go check that out. And if you like what I do, God, I hate saying stuff like this, but if you press the like button or make a comment or tell a friend, it really does help, because I tend to not care so much how far I go with these as far as people actually watching them, but it does get disheartening when when I feel like people aren't watching them. So if you enjoy it, let me know. Please let me know. And I will be back again at some point. Like I said, I never promised these would be a weekly thing. I did that for a little while, but I will try to do these regularly enough to keep you all entertained with selections from my personal weird library. So until next time, thank you, and stay weird out there.